The millionaire meets the reluctant bride by mistake. Her gentle honesty redirects his path. The camera glides through the golden haze of a late afternoon inside a tiny bridal studio in Willow Creek. Lace veils flutter from open garment bags. A florist rushes past with trembling hands. Someone calls out that the groom has arrived. But Elena Hart is frozen before the mirror, her breath shallow against the stiff bodice of a rented wedding dress. She presses her palm to her chest, as if trying to steady a heart that refuses to belong in white silk. A door creaks open behind her. Light spills across the floorboards. A man steps inside. Tall, composed, out of place. Julian Parker pauses in the doorway, glancing around as if he has walked into the wrong world entirely. For a single suspended moment, their eyes meet through the mirror, hers wide with reluctance, his caught in a quiet, startled recognition. No one knows yet that this is a mistake that will unravel secrets, a mistake that will change both of their lives. And as the studio staff push them together, as their hands touch for the very first time, one question rises above everything else. What is going to happen to them? Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The camera settles into real time as Elena Hart steps out from behind the curtain, her fingers curled tightly around a bouquet wrapped in a thin white ribbon. The scent of baby's breath fills the warm studio air. She moves carefully, almost reluctantly, as if each step inside the dress carries a quiet apology to herself. Across the aisle of staged wooden chairs, Julian Parker stands under the arch of borrowed flowers. His posture is composed, but there is a subtle tension in the way he lifts his chin, the way his eyes drift from one corner of the room to another, searching for certainty he cannot find. He was told this was the right place. He was told the bride would be waiting. What he was not told is why the room feels wrong. Elena stops a few feet from him. Her breath catches. Julian turns toward her fully, and the light catches in his eyes. There is no smile ready on his lips, only a quiet surprise, as though he has been pulled into a story that does not belong to him. A stylist whispers urgently, "Take his hand, Elena." She hesitates. Julian extends his hand slowly, not out of confidence, but out of courtesy, as if offering peace to a stranger. Elena places her hand in his. Her fingers tremble against his steady warmth. The camera lingers on the contact, capturing the moment the reluctant bride and the unintended groom stand face to face. Around them, the studio staff move quickly, setting up lights, adjusting lenses, calling out instructions. But inside the small circle the two of them occupy, the noise fades. Elena forces a polite breath. Julian studies her expression. Noticing the tension, she tries to hide. He leans slightly closer, voice gentle. "You do not look like someone who enjoys this." She almost laughs. "Almost. I do not," she admits quietly. "But sometimes we do what we must." Something softens in Julian's eyes, a flicker of recognition, as if he understands more than he can say. The photographer raises his camera. "Perfect. Hold that. Elena Inales." Julian steadies their joined hands. And just as the shutter clicks, something shifts between them, a beginning neither of them intended. Elena steps away from Julian the moment the photographer announces a short break. She moves toward a narrow hallway lined with old picture frames, lifting the hem of the dress so she does not trip. Her breath is shallow. The laughter from the staff echoes behind her, but none of it reaches her. She slides into a quieter corner and presses her palm to her forehead, trying to calm the restlessness spreading through her chest. The dress weighs on her like a reminder of everything she cannot afford to dream about. Somewhere, in her tote bag tucked under a folding chair, there's an envelope of unpaid bills. She promised her mother that the lights would stay on this month. She promised herself she would not feel anything during this fake wedding job. but her hands still feel the warmth of Julian's touch, steady and patient, as if he sensed something unspoken beneath her reluctance. In the main room, Julian adjusts the cuff of his jacket. He tries to look composed, but his eyes drift toward the hallway where Elena disappeared. The studio smells faintly of roses and dust. A part of him wants to leave. He does not belong in this small-town set, surrounded by people who believe he is just another hired groom. Yet something about Elena's honesty pulls him inward instead of out the door. He takes a slow breath. His phone vibrates again. He does not check it. He already knows who it is. Every call today has been from his mother or the members of the Parker board, reminding him that Willow Creek is not a detour, but a duty. They expect him to attend the arranged meeting with the appropriate bride. They expect compliance. They expect a signature. They expect a future he never agreed to. He looks toward the door Elena walked through. For the first time that afternoon, he feels his chest tighten with a different kind of pressure. Elena returns, bouquet now slightly loosened from how tightly she held it. She gives the staff a small smile they immediately accept as genuine, but Julian sees the strain behind it. She approaches the arch again, standing beside him with a small, composed nod. "Are you all right?" he asks quietly. Elena straightens the ribbon on her bouquet. "I am fine. This dress is heavier than I thought." "That is not what I meant," he says gently. Her eyes lift to meet his. For a moment, she considers brushing off the question, but something in his expression invites an answer she has not allowed herself to give anyone in a long time. "I need the paycheck," Elena admits softly, "and I need it today. That is all." Julian absorbs her words slowly. No dramatics, no embellishment. Just truth, offered plainly. She does not hide her struggle. She does not pretend the world is kinder than it is. He nods once. "Thank you for telling me." Elena looks away, unsure how to respond to sincerity that does not demand anything from her in return. She has met many people who want to save her or judge her, but very few who simply listen. The photographer calls them back into position. Elena moves beside Julian, her posture more guarded now, but her steps steadier. He offers his hand again. She hesitates only a breath before placing her fingers in his. This time the camera captures something quieter but more profound. Two strangers standing in a moment neither of them planned for, carrying burdens that neither can see fully yet, but somehow sensing the weight. As the fake ceremony resumes, Elena catches Julian watching her with a question in his gaze, something like concern and something like curiosity. She does not know yet that this question will follow both of them far beyond the studio door. But for now, she simply holds his hand and looks straight ahead, unaware that the smallest cracks in her guarded life have already begun to open. The final shutter clicks and the mock ceremony wraps. Staff begin clearing props, unraveling cords, and folding chairs with practiced efficiency. The room relaxes into a soft hum, no longer charged with performance. Elena releases Julian's hand as soon as the photographer announces the shoot is complete, but she does it with a gentleness that surprises even her. She steps toward a small wooden bench near the back of the studio, letting the bouquet rest on her lap. Julian follows at a respectful distance. There is no script now, no lines to deliver, no stage smiles. Only the uncertain quiet between two people who have shared a moment they were never meant to share. Elena unties the ribbon from the bouquet, smoothing the fabric between her fingers. It is thin, inexpensive, fraying slightly at the edges. Yet she handles it with care, as if it represents more than a prop used for 30 minutes. She sets it beside her, unaware that a second ribbon has already slipped loose and fallen near Julian's feet. He notices it when he approaches her. He bends down, picks it up, and folds it instinctively. He does not know why he does this, only that the ribbon feels connected to something delicate and unspoken. Elena glances up at him. "You do not need to stay," she says. "This kind of job is not very glamorous." "Neither is most of my life," Julian replies with a soft smile. "I wanted to check if you were all right." There is no judgment in his voice, only genuine interest. Elena exhales slowly. "I am fine. I just forget how heavy this whole act can feel." She taps the scrapbook. Beside her, the one she brought to review during breaks. I prefer making wedding invitations to pretending to be in a wedding. Julian sits on the far edge of the bench, leaving space so she does not feel crowded. Did you make these? He asks, nodding toward the scrapbook. Elena opens it, revealing pages of hand-cut designs, watercolor sketches, and layered paper art. Some pages are smudged with ink. Others hold ribbons or pressed flowers. The studio lights reflect off the soft greens and warm creams she uses repeatedly. I use leftover paper from the stationery shop down the street, she says. Scrap bins, misprints, rejects. It is all I can afford. Julian studies the details. These do not look like rejects. They are, she insists quietly. They just try to be something better. Her words hold a truth that reaches beyond paper. He senses it immediately. He touches the edge of one invitation with cautious fingers. This shade of green, he says. It feels gentle, like a field after rain. Elena stops, surprised by the precision of his observation. It is my favorite. If I ever open a real studio, I want that to be my signature color. She says it lightly, but there is a longing in her tone that betrays the weight of the dream. Julian closes the scrapbook carefully. Why not open one? Even a small space can change everything. Dreams are expensive, Elena replies. Reality is due at the end of every month. She stands, gathering the dress around her. I should change before they charge me for wrinkles. Julian rises as well. Will I see you again? The question slips out more urgently than he intends. Elena pauses at the doorway, her silhouette framed by soft golden light. Willow Creek is small, she says. People cross paths whether they plan to or not. She gives him a small, fleeting smile before disappearing behind the curtain. Julian looks down at the ribbon in his hand, the one she did not notice she lost. He closes his fingers around it, as if holding a quiet promise he cannot yet name. He does not know that this simple ribbon, carried out of the studio in his pocket, will outlast every lie he is still afraid to confess. And Elena, behind the curtain, does not know that the man who held her hand today is the same man, whose name dominates business headlines far beyond their small town. What they both feel, even without knowing why, is that something has begun, something neither of them meant to invite. The rain has stopped by the time Elena walks home from the bridal studio. The dress has been returned, the paycheck folded into her pocket, and the weight of the day settles heavily on her shoulders. She lowers her head against the cold breeze, passing familiar storefronts that are just beginning to light up for the evening. Willow Creek feels small, but tonight it feels quieter than usual, as if the entire town exhaled at once. The next morning, Elena pushes open the door of Hahn's Stationery, the only place in town that sells scrap paper by the pound. The faint scent of cardboard and ink greets her. She kneels beside the large discount bin, digging through stacks of misprints and uneven cuts. She finds a handful of sheets in her favorite pale green shade and sets them aside with a soft smile. The bell above the door rings again. She does not look up until a familiar voice speaks. That color is back in stock. Elena freezes. She turns her head and sees Julian Parker standing by the entrance, holding a small stack of blank notebooks. He looks different outside the studio lights. The suit is gone. His hair is slightly ruffled. His jacket is too casual for a groom, but somehow perfect for a man trying not to stand out. You, Elena says, startled. I thought you left town. I thought so too, Julian replies. But my work brought me here again, and apparently this store too. There is no charm in his tone, just an ease that makes her guard soften despite herself. She stands and brushes dust from her hands. You shop here? She asks, raising an eyebrow. I am trying, Julian says, opening his wallet. He glances inside, realizing too late that he only has cards, none of which belong in a small-town stationery shop that only accepts cash. He hesitates, holding a glossy black card that looks completely out of place against the faded counter. Elena sees his expression and laughs lightly. They do not take those. Trust me, I asked once. Julian closes the wallet, embarrassed. I guessed. Before he can decide what to do, Elena reaches in her own pocket and picks up half of the paper she had selected. Here, she says. Take some of mine. I can afford this much today. He looks at her for a moment, surprised not just by the offer, but by the simplicity of it. It is an act without expectation, without performance. You are paying for my paper? He asks. Elena shrieks. It is either that or you leave empty-handed. Besides, it is only scrap paper. It is not a luxury item. To you, Julian says quietly, it is more than that. She glances away, caught off guard by the accuracy of his words. They step outside together, both carrying uneven stacks. The air is crisp, filled with the earthy smell of fields waking after last night's rain. They walk a few steps without speaking. Julian breaks the silence. Do you live nearby? 2 blocks up, Elena replies. Above the grocery store with the flickering neon sign. He smiles. I noticed that sign. It feels like it wants to argue with people. She laughs softly, the corners of her eyes warming. It argues with me every night. Her laughter fades into a thoughtful stillness. You said your work brought you here. What do you do exactly? Yesterday, you looked like one kind of person. Today, you look like another. Julian breathes in slowly, choosing his words with care. I work with agriculture technology. We analyze soil and crop patterns. Sometimes I travel to small towns to check sensors and survey farmland. Elena knows. That sounds complicated. It is complicated, he agrees, but not always important. They stop at the corner where their paths separate. I should check on my mother, Elena says. She gets dizzy if I stay out too long. Concern flashes across his face. Is she all right? She will be, Elena says, adjusting her stack of papers. Life is just heavy sometimes. Julian nods, understanding more than he should. If you ever need help carrying those stairs, I am very strong. She smiles. I will remember that. They part ways, each holding the same shade of green paper. Neither of them says it out loud, but both feel the same quiet truth. This was not an accident. This was the beginning of something neither of them planned. The next few days in Willow Creek unfold with a quiet rhythm that neither Elena nor Julian planned for, yet both fall into. Without resistance. Each morning the town wakes slowly, and each evening it settles into a softness that feels older than the buildings themselves. Somewhere between these hours, their paths keep crossing as if the town itself insists on weaving them closer. One afternoon, Elena steps out of the grocery store downstairs, balancing 3 paper bags against her hip. Julian appears on the sidewalk before she even notices him. He is holding a rented pickup truck key and a cup of hot chocolate that he offers with an unsure smile. I remembered you said you cannot afford coffee most days, he says. This is not coffee, but it is warm. Elena accepts it, hands brushing his for a brief second that neither of them acknowledges aloud. She laughs softly. You remembered that? I remember many things, Julian admits. She does not ask what those things are, but her cheeks flush lightly. They load the bags into the truck, and Julian insists on driving her home, even though the trip is only 3 minutes. Elena protests halfway, but the wind picks up and she relents, climbing into the passenger seat. The road stretches past open fields. Golden sunlight presses against the windows. For a moment, the world feels suspended. Julian glances at her hands folded in her lap. You work hard, he says gently. Most people do, she replies. But you work hard with no safety net, Julian says. That is different. Elena looks out the window. I do not want pity. It is not pity, he says. It is recognition. The conversation settles into the soft silence of 2 people beginning to understand each other beyond first impressions. Later that week, Julian drives her through the farmland that surrounds Willow Creek. He tells her he needs to check sensors, but they both know he is lingering for reasons that have nothing to do with technology. They climb onto the back of the truck, legs dangling over the edge, watching the sun bleed into the horizon. That line of trees, Elena says, pointing to a distant boundary, used to be part of my grandfather's land. Julian studies her expression. What happened to it? Paper happened, she says with a bitter smile. Contracts. Finiprint. My mother trusted the wrong relative. We lost more than we understood. Julian's jaw tightens. He says nothing, but he files this information deep inside, where concern and responsibility quietly begin to merge. Elena turns her face toward the wind. I want to fight for it, but I cannot fight a man with lawyers and money when I can barely pay rent. Reality does not care about what you want. Julian looks at her for a long moment. Reality might not care, he says softly. But I do. The words hang between them, fragile and true. Elena's breath catches, but she does not pull away. That night, they sit on the stairs outside her building, sipping water from plastic cups. The neon sign flickers angrily overhead. Their knees almost touch. Julian asks quietly, "Do you believe in marriage?" Elena gives a short laugh. "I believe in rent and groceries. Marriage is optional." And if someone asks you seriously, he presses, voice barely above a whisper. Not a stage question, a real one. Elena turns to him, her eyes steady and unguarded. Then I would ask him only one thing. Will he still hold my hand when everything goes wrong, when life gets heavy, when money disappears, and when love is not pretty anymore? If he hesitates, I walk away. Julian holds her gaze, feeling something shift inside him, something he cannot hide, but still cannot confess fully. She sighs and leans back against the wall. That question is the only truth I trust. Julian understands exactly what she means. He also understands that he is already failing the test, because every moment he stays silent about who he really is, the distance between them grows. But he does not speak. Not yet. The quiet between them deepens, warm and uncertain, like the pause before a turning point neither of them is prepared for. A storm rolls into Willow Creek 2 days later, the kind that turns the sky into iron and sends dust spinning across the empty fields. Elena is carrying a folder of documents for her mother when she is asked to deliver them to her relative, Harold Green. She hesitates but goes anyway. The sooner she finishes, the sooner she can return home before the storm worsens. Harold's large brick house sits at the edge of town, looming over the small, uneven fields that once belonged to her grandfather. She steps inside after a stiff greeting from Harold's assistant. The house smells like old leather and polished wood. Voices echo from the study, muffled but urgent. Elena pauses outside the half-open door. "I want this land secured," Harold says sharply. Once Parker Industries finalizes the deal, the Hart girl loses all leverage. Her signature means nothing after that. The name Parker Industries freezes Elena in place. Her pulse quickens. She edges closer. On the screen of Harold's laptop, a video call is open. Corporate logos glow at the top. Several executives appear. Among them is a face she knows. A face she thought she understood. Julian Parker. He speaks with calm authority, the tone of a man fully in control. "We will evaluate the soil rights once the initial documents are signed," he says. "We cannot move forward until everything is legally secured." The room tilts around Elena. The storm outside rattles the windows. She stares as Harold nods in agreement, praising Julian's efficiency. It is enough. The truth that she had feared most settles like a stone in her chest. Julian is not a struggling engineer. He is not a man passing through town. He is not someone who understands her losses by coincidence. He is part of the machine that may take the last piece of her family's land. Before Harold can notice her, she turns and bolts out the front door. The storm hits her full force. Rain lashes her face, soaking her hair to her skin. She runs down the long driveway, heart pounding, breath sharp and uneven. She hears her name once, faint behind her, but she does not stop. "Elena." Julian appears at the entrance of the property, having just pulled up in a car. His umbrella flips backward in the wind as he sees her stumbling through the rain. "Elena, wait." She shakes her head, her voice strangled. "Do not come near me. Do not say my name." He tries to reach her, but she steps back, tears mixing with the downpour. "You lied to me," she says. "Every day, every word. You knew exactly what I was losing, and you still stood in my kitchen acting like you cared." "Elena, I can explain," Julian pleads, moving closer. "I did not know Harold was manipulating anything. You only hid who you are," she says, voice trembling. "You let me believe something that made it easy for you. You knew what money and power could do to families like mine. Elena, please, do not follow me, she whispers. Then she turns toward the sloping road that leads back into town. A truck engine roars from the bend above, tires struggling on wet asphalt. Julian sees it a split second before she does. Elena, he shouts, sprinting. The truck skids sideways, fishtailing in the rain. Elena slips on the slick pavement. She falls to one knee, unable to regain her footing. Julian reaches her just as the truck careens toward them. He throws himself forward, arms wrapping around her waist, pushing her with all his strength toward the grassy shoulder. They crash hard onto the embankment. Metal screams across the road as the truck skids past, missing them by inches. Elena gasps, stunned, mud splattering across her clothes. She turns toward Julian. He is lying on his side, breath ragged, his shoulder twisted unnaturally. Julian, she whispers, her hands shaking as she reaches for him. Julian, please open your eyes. He blinks, pain etched across his face, but forces a faint smile. I told you. I remember things. Her tears fall faster than the rain. Sirens begin to wail in the distance. And in that fragile space between fear and truth, Elena realizes that the man she thought had only betrayed her has just risked everything to save her. The hospital corridor is cold, humming with low fluorescent lights that never truly rest. Elena sits on a plastic chair outside the emergency room, her clothes soaked, her fingers trembling as she presses them together. Rainwater drips slowly from her sleeves onto the floor. Nurses move past her with quiet urgency, and every time the doors swing open, she looks up as if expecting someone to tell her that Julian Parker is awake and asking for her. But no one does. She closes her eyes and hears again the sound of metal scraping across the road, the thud of their bodies hitting the wet earth, his voice strained as he whispered her name. She tries to steady her breath, but the memory does not loosen. It stays sharp and unforgiving. A door at the far end of the hallway opens. Harold Green steps through, followed by a man in a dark suit carrying a leather folder. Elena Stephens. Harold approaches with a measured calm that unsettles her. Elena, he says, pretending surprise. I heard about the accident. Such unfortunate timing. She stands, though her legs feel weak. What do you want? Harold gestures to the man beside him. This is a representative from Parker Industries. We were finalizing some documents with Julian before the accident. Given the situation, we may need your signature as well. The man opens the folder and reveals a stack of legal papers. Elena schemes the first page. Her heart sinks. Words like temporary land transfer, holding rights, and protective stewardship blur together into something that feels both calculated and familiar. You expect me to sign this? She asks slowly. Harold sighs with exaggerated patience. Elena, this is to protect your family's remaining land. Julian had already agreed to support the process. The man beside him nods mechanically. Mr. Parker initiated the structure. It is very beneficial for you. Elena's pulse spikes. She flips to the next page. It shows her name printed beneath a clause she does not remember discussing with anyone. A sense of betrayal crawls up her spine. He agreed to this? She whispers. That is correct. The representative replies without hesitation. It was part of the preliminary arrangement. Harold folds his arms smugly. You see, you always worry too much. Julian Parker is a businessman. Everything he did according to the deal. The words crash through her like a physical blow. She shakes her head. No, Julian would not do this. Not this. Harold's expression hardens. Do not be naive. Men like him do not fall in love with girls like you, Elena. He used what you told him, and he acted on it. That is all. Her breath stutters. She steps back, clutching the papers to her chest, as if they are burning her hands. Behind them, the emergency room door opens. Nurses wheel Julian out on a gurney, his eyes closed, his arms strapped to his side. Elena rushes forward instinctively, but a nurse gently holds her back. He should regain consciousness soon, the nurse says, but he needs rest. Family only at this time. Family only. The words slice deeper than they should. Julian's mother walks beside the gurney, her expression sharp with fear and anger. She does not acknowledge Elena at all. She does not need to. Her silence carries generations of distance. The gurney disappears around the corner. Elena remains frozen, her heart pounding with panic and humiliation. The papers tremble in her hands. She walks slowly to the small waiting bench outside his room. When Julian finally stirs awake hours later, she is there. But she is not the same woman who cried for him on the roadside. She steps inside quietly. Julian tries to sit up, wincing. "Elena," he whispers, "I needed to tell you so many things." She places the contract papers on his blanket. Her voice is quiet, steady, controlled. "I read what you agreed to. I saw your call with Harold. I saw everything." Julian's eyes widen. "It is not what you think." Elena shakes her head. Her face is pale, but her dignity stands tall. "I cannot survive being wrong about you. Not twice. I cannot afford it." He reaches for her hand, but she steps back. "You saved my life," she says. "But you also broke something I cannot hold together anymore." She turns away as his voice cracks behind her. "Elena, please do not leave." She stops at the doorway, but does not look back. "I already have," she whispers. And then she walks down the corridor, leaving Julian with nothing but the echo of her footsteps and the truth he waited too long to tell. For the next several days, Julian remains in a hospital with his shoulder immobilized and his world quiet in ways he does not recognize. His phone stays face down on the bedside table. He ignores every call from the Parker board, every message from his mother, every reminder of deadlines he once treated as immovable pillars of his life. The only absence that matters is Elena's. Each morning he watches the door with a faint hope that she might appear, carrying the same steady calm she always brought with her. But the door stays closed, and the chair she once sat in remains empty. Her silence becomes the weight he cannot push away. On the third morning, he asks his assistant to bring Harold Green's files. The tone of his voice leaves no room for excuses. When the documents arrive, Julian reads every page, every clause, every adjustment Harold inserted. Anger sharpens slowly, not at Elena, but the man who manipulated them both. Julian signs orders, authorizations, and legal requests with his left hand. His handwriting looks different, but his resolve is stronger than it has been in years. By the end of the week, Harold Green is forced into a legal meeting he cannot control. Evidence of misrepresentation, falsified, estimates, and intentional coercion is placed directly in front of him. Julian speaks with a calm edge that leaves no room for denial. "You used her vulnerability," he says. "You used her family, and you used my involvement as leverage. That ends today." Harold sputters, searching for power that is no longer in the room. Security escorts him out after the final document is signed. Elena's land is returned entirely to her name, with a legal shield that ensures no one can attempt to take it from her again. Julian breathes out, but the relief does not come. Justice achieved does not equal forgiveness earned. When he is discharged from the hospital, he walks slowly through Willow Creek with his arm in a sling. He follows the path he memorized during the weeks he spent beside Elena. The grocery store with the flickering neon sign, the narrow alley that leads to her staircase, the street where the sunset always burned deeper than anywhere else. But he does not go to her door. He goes somewhere else first. At the edge of town, a small building waits with fresh paint and warm lights glowing inside. The old storage shed has been transformed into a paper studio, filled with cutting tables, shelves of cardstock, ribbons, and watercolor pigments arranged with gentle intention. The air smells faintly of glue, lavender, and new beginnings. Above the doorway hangs a simple wooden sign, Heart Paper Studio. Inside, on a central table, lies a glass frame containing the white ribbon Elena lost in the bridal studio. It is pressed between two sheets of clear pane, resting on a background of her signature pale green. At the bottom is a small engraving, "For the girl who makes beauty out of leftovers." Julian stands quietly as the soft footsteps approach from behind. Elena enters the studio with a bag of supplies in her hand, unaware that he is there. When she sees him, she stops in the doorway. Her breath catches in her throat, not out of fear, but out of a fragile confusion. "Julian," she says slowly, "why are you here?" He steps aside so she can see the room fully. "This is yours," he says. "No contracts, no conditions, no parquet industries involvement. It is funded privately, placed legally in your name, and protected from any future interference." Elena sets down her bag, her eyes moving across the space piece by piece, as if afraid the room might disappear if she blinks. "You did all this?" she whispers. Julian nods. "I cannot erase the ways I hurt you, but I can return what was taken, and I can make sure you never lose what you love again." He reaches into his pocket with his uninjured hand and pulls out a small velvet box. He opens it gently. Inside rests a simple silver ring, the engraving visible even from where she stands. Not a contract. Julian looks at her with a steadiness she has never seen in him before. "I am not asking for an answer today," he says softly. "I'm only asking for the chance to earn one. If you let me, I will spend every day proving that the man you trusted is still here. No titles, no lies, just truth." Elena touches the frame containing the white ribbon, her fingers trembling. The studio is silent except for her quiet breath. Outside, Willow Creek settles into evening light. Inside, something new begins to bloom. Elena stands in the center of the studio, surrounded by the soft glow of warm lights reflecting off pale green cardstock. The room feels alive, not because of what it contains, but because of what it represents. A dream she buried, a future she never thought she could touch, and a man who stands before her with no shield of wealth, no disguise, and no expectation. Julian waits quietly. His posture is steady, yet there is a vulnerability in his eyes that she has never seen before. He does not reach for her. He does not rush her. He simply lets the silence settle, offering her the freedom to step forward or step away. Elena walks slowly around the studio, tracing her fingers across the new supplies, the carefully arranged tools, the framed ribbon that hangs like a heartbeat on the wall. Every corner reflects something she once whispered into the world without believing anyone would hear. She turns back to Julian. "You should not have done all of this," she says softly. Julian shakes his head. "It was never about what I should do. It was about what was right." Elena studies him for a long moment. The sling on his arm, the exhaustion in his face, the quiet sincerity in his voice. He is not the powerful executive she saw on Harold's computer screen. He is simply Julian, the man who remembered the weight of her worries, the color of her dreams, and the pain she tried to hide. "I thought you betrayed me," she says, "and I thought that meant everything about you was a lie." Julian swallows, the truth tightening his breath. "Parts of me were lies. I will not ask you to forget that." "I cannot forget," Elena replies, "but I can decide what comes next." She steps closer to him, slow and deliberate, until the space between them becomes something fragile and warm. Her eyes soften. "You told me you wanted a chance to earn an answer," she says. "A chance is something I can give." Julian's breath catches, not in victory, but in relief. "Elena, I did not expect anything more than that." She glances at the ring in his hand. A simple silver band, quiet and unassuming, engraved with the words he hoped would heal instead of bind. "This ring," she murmurs, "is not a promise. It is a beginning." He nods. "Exactly." Elena gently closes the velvet box, but she keeps it in her hand, not returning it, not rejecting it, holding it as if testing its weight, as if learning its place in her story. Weeks pass in a stillness that becomes something steady. Julian helps where he can, with paperwork he never forces on her, with errands that never feel like debts, with evenings spent sitting quietly in the doorway of the studio as she paints swatches of green on thick paper. Trust grows slowly, carefully, like new stems after winter. One evening, as the sunset casts amber light across Willow Creek, Elena opens the studio door to find Julian arranging dried flowers on the work table. He looks up, startled. "You are early," he says. "And you are terrible at arranging flowers," she teases. Julian blushes, almost boyish. "I was trying to help." She walks toward him, her steps light. You have helped enough, she says softly. Now I think it is my turn. He tilts his head. Your turn for what? Elena sets the silver ring on the table between them. The engraving faces upward. Julian Parker, she says, voice steady. This time, I'm not asking if you can live with what I fear. I'm asking if you can live with who I am. Julian reaches for her hand, the question in his eyes already answered. Yes, he whispers. For as long as you let me. She lifts the ring and places it gently on his palm. Then this time, it is a yes. Julian draws her into his arms, carefully because of his healing shoulder, but firmly enough that she feels the certainty in him. Their foreheads touch, their breaths blend, and the quiet between them becomes something complete. Outside, the neon sign flickers less angrily tonight, as if even the town understands the ending. Inside the studio, Elena Hart and Julian Parker stand together, surrounded by ribbons, paper, and the life they chose freely. A life that began as a mistake and became the right path.